Leave my laptop here. Leave my laptop here.
All right. Good. All right, folks, we're about to get started. If everyone can please get to your seats. Please get to your seats. For those incoming, please find a seat. Tons of empty seats right here. Over here as well. This whole section right here, this row. If everyone can please get to your seats. Please get to your seats. For those incoming, please find a seat. Tons of empty seats right here. Over here as well. This whole section right here, this row. If everyone can please get to your seats. Please get to your seats. For those incoming, please find a seat. Tons of empty seats right here. Over here as well. This whole section right here, this row. If everyone can please get to your seats. Please get to your seats. For those incoming, please find a seat. Tons of empty seats right here. Over here as well. I think we're good to go. Okay. Where's the Congress area? Where's the Congress? Where's the Congress? The Where's the Congress area? you might have to do manually. I'm gonna try to see if I can get on this side. And then your mic's right there. I don't think I need it. Oh, like the Zoom can't hear you if you don't have it. But it's pretty loud. Oh, okay. And then he has a mic. He just needs to turn it.
Okay, if you can hear me once, clap once. If you can hear me twice, clap twice. If you can hear me 3 times, clap 3 times. All right. Thank you, everybody. We've done a lot already. I just love the sound of data, narrative, and action happening. Like you're like talking to each other, coming up with amazing ideas. Thank you, everybody. We already heard about your vision. We've done a lot already. Where is that at? Data, narrative, and action happening. Like you're like. Is there a Zoom here? That we need to amazing ideas. We already heard about your vision. We've done a lot already. Okay, I'm gonna try it now and hopefully we're good. Okay, hopefully our tech is fine and I won't hear my echo go into space and come back in like 5 seconds. So we have a very special guest here, Congressman Mark Takano. I'm going to introduce him in a little bit. But the Congressman is interested in finding out, what are all these young people doing here? How did you get all these young folks here? What do they care about? What is this all about? So I want to give a little bit of context for the Congressman, but also for all of us to recenter us, right? We talk about the importance of core values to recenter us. So we are here in the Inland Empire. Okay, we need the mic. So we are here in the Inland Empire. For the Southern California Youth Futures Summit. We've talked about how the Youth Future Summit in Sacramento on March 12th is the first Youth Future Summit in the country. I guess this is the one even before that. So that's the second one technically. And what we're about is thinking long-term and coming up with visions, but also ideas and solutions for our long-term success. Now we have those 5 core values that I've talked to you about, but fundamentally what we're about is to make sure that we keep California a global leader as a state of innovation and a state of inclusion. We have to do both of those things. And in fact, many people will tell you, you cannot do innovation if you're not inclusive, right? The best ideas, the brightest ideas come when you pull everyone's ideas together, regardless of their background. The reverse is also true. You cannot do inclusion and equity using old ideas. You have to come up with new ideas and new solutions. So that's fundamentally what this is about, and the conversation today is about. As I said before, if you peel all the layers in the onion, what it's at its core is that California 100 is a project that is sponsored through the University of California system, the entire system, and Stanford University. We're working with you all to design a vision and a strategy for the next 100 years that is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. Now, one little factoid, you may have known this before you came here, you will not forget it once you leave. The average person born in California today can expect to live 100 years. Now you have to ask yourself, have we built systems in California that will serve them, you, throughout your lifetimes? The answer is probably not. In fact, those systems aren't working right now. Many of those systems are under enormous strain, and we're moving from one kind of stable order in the world, in our country, in our economy, in our society, to something else. We're kind of like in a new industrial revolution. Many people call this the 4th industrial revolution. And we need to be prepared. By the way, major corporations are prepared. Recently, I was at a conference and I saw, well, actually, before I get to that, I'll say one of the things when I do with young folks, I put up a slide. Imagine, right, an image of green, verdant fields, solar panels, windmills, right? And I ask, what is this an ad for? Anyone want to guess what it's an ad for? Energy. Some kind of clean energy company, maybe, right? Well, it's an ad for Chevron, right? One of the major kind of fossil fuel companies on the planet today. And by the way, they have called themselves now the human energy company. BP used to be British Petroleum, now it's Beyond Petroleum. And in fact, if you look at long-term futures work, if you go to our website, california100.org/toolkits, you will see some of the origin of strategic foresight started with the Shell Oil Corporation in the 1960s. So these oil companies are thinking 30, 40, 50 years ahead. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is thinking 50, 100 years ahead. Major governments are thinking 50, 100 years ahead. It's the rest of us that are being left behind. Because the more organized you are, you get to set the rules of the game. So hopefully, with the kind of capability you all will build today, is you will bring people power to that equation to make sure that we set the rules of the game, right? And not just take whatever is set in front of us. These are our core values. They spell I Rise. We're an aspirational initiative. So please, whenever you engage in this work, think about your core values and our core values as well. We have 15 research areas. Oh, this is not showing up to you guys. What is going on? I'm just like presenting something for myself. I think I need to. Is everything turning on? Yeah? Oh, all right. That's the core values. That's not too much. Okay, so these are our 15 issue areas. Generally speaking, we're talking about health and well-being. We're talking about energy, natural resources, and the environment. We're talking about governance, including this provocative notion of California as a foreign policy power. What might it look like if we opened up consulates with our top 10 trading partners, right? That's federalism and foreign policy. Immigrant inclusion. The federal government reigns supreme on immigration, but California has pushed the edge. Actually, there's a lot more room to push in terms of what we can do on immigration reform within the state of California. There's so many other issues here as well, including talent and workforce. What you'll do today is we're taking these 15 issue areas and we're boiling it down to 6, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we do so, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome now a hometown leader, Congressman Mark Takano from the city of Riverside. Congressman Mark Takano is many things, right? He's the first openly gay person of color to get elected to Congress and to serve in Congress. Huge. Please give a hand. He comes from a proud tradition, multi-generation of Japanese Americans in the United States, whose ancestors, not even ancestors, not even, I think maybe just a couple of generations before, were interned during World War II. He's also an educator. He was a teacher in Riverside, and he brings that, all of that, to his service and leadership in Congress. Now, we were just talking, and we're already cooking up ideas of bringing other members of Congress here to see the kind of excitement that is being generated here. So I'll let the congressman say a little bit about that. We're talking about big, bold ideas here. One of the ideas that the congressman told me about, you may want to think about in terms of the future of work, right? When we talk about meaningful work and wealth, to think about the 4-day work week as opposed to a 5-day work week, right? That's an idea that's like starting to gain currency. So maybe we'll hear the congressman say a little bit about that. But I'm just going to turn it right over to Congressman Mark Takano.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, to try to do all that in 10 minutes. Well, thank you. What an amazing sight that you are, and inspirational to me, actually. Joe Biden, our president, is 80 years old, but he has said to me a number of times, he's never been more optimistic in his life about the future of our country, despite all the things that have happened in the last few years. For many who look at our democracy, it appears to be on the verge of decline. Some say it has already declined. I saw a disturbing snippet in the news just this morning about a poll that came out showing that alarming numbers of Americans, including liberals, not just conservatives, are open to the idea of a strong man leader, an authoritarian leader. Authoritarianism is the very opposite of what we supposedly believe in, which is democracy, liberal democracy. Those two words together, liberal and democracy. Does liberal mean, what does liberal mean in this case? Liberal means free market ideas or market ideas. Democracy, of course, we have a sense of what that word means, right? But liberal democracy, they seem to go together. How can you have innovation, new things happening, but also have an authoritarian closed system where just a few people are making decisions for the rest of us, right? So we see freedom in two ways. We see freedom in terms of how we operate economically and freedom how we operate politically. Let me just leave that as an open thought, but go back to a little bit of my story. I did grow up in Riverside. I was born and raised here. I was born at Parkview Hospital. I went to La Sierra High School. And the La Sierra High School people here? No. I grew up in this city, and I had some very influential elementary school teachers. My 5th and 6th grade teachers. My 5th grade teacher is the one that taught me about civics, taught me about government, taught me about the 3 branches of government. And she gave me a report to write about Franklin Roosevelt, FDR. And that got me really more interested in government and politics. And then I had a 6th grade teacher who was one of those 1960s teachers. That's a long time ago, but I don't know if you've studied the 1960s, but that was a time of anti-war, an anti-war mood among young people. They didn't want to be drafted into the Vietnam War. And so my 6th grade teacher was kind of like that teacher. He didn't have a guitar and he didn't sing Kumbaya, but actually my 4th grade teacher taught me how to sing Kumbaya. She had a guitar. I had 2 teachers. We had 3 different teachers we went between in 4th grade and among. And but anyway, I was a smart kid in the class, and he enjoyed talking about politics. And the other kids in the room said, "This is so boring," and why don't you two just stop talking about all this stuff? But after I left 6th grade, that was the summer that the House of Representatives, the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives, held hearings on the articles of impeachment to impeach Richard Nixon. And what did Richard Nixon do? I don't know if you all studied this or not, but Richard Nixon probably knew about an effort to burglarize the Democratic National Committee, to cheat, basically, to go and send in burglars to go and try and gain an advantage. But those burglars got caught by the police. And what Richard Nixon engaged in as president was a cover-up, and tried to cover up the fact that this had happened. And he lied about it. And it's an interesting thing. You should go look at this, but for the idea of the president of the United States sort of involved in a conspiracy to undermine a fair election. This was very troubling to the nation. I was a young person. I was 13, 14 years old, and I would come home every day from school to watch these hearings. And one of the people who was a freshman member, I remember this is like 1973, 74. So these are people elected in 1972. And you got to remember that this is after 1965 when they passed the Voting Rights Act. So it's the first decade where you see an uptick in the election of minorities to Congress. And the person that caught my attention as a 13-year-old boy was this very eloquent Black woman who represented Houston. Her name was Barbara Jordan. And Barbara Jordan gave a captivating opening 7-minute speech. The chairman had given every member, because it was such an important moment, every member of that committee, it's a large committee, had a chance to address the nation, basically. And she talked about how unlikely it was for someone like her, the descendant of slaves, to be sitting as an inquisitor. She used the word inquisitor. I'm here as an inquisitor. And what she then went on to say was that she believed in the Constitution, that her belief in the Constitution was whole, it was complete. And I forget, you can look up the quote on your phones, but it's a famous quote. And I remember just being riveted by this, by Barbara Jordan. And then the whole proceedings, the way that they talked, how eloquent they were, the gravity of the moment, that this was about holding the most powerful person in our country accountable for an abuse of power, and that no person was above the law. That's the whole principle, that we are not only free, but we're equal as people, that nobody should be able to get away with committing a crime like this. And you can read more and more of the story on your own, but essentially what happened is that, the evidence showed that the president was guilty of all these things. And it was Republicans in the Senate. They went to Richard Nixon. They went to Richard Nixon and said, Mr. Nixon, Mr. President, don't put the country through this trauma. You need to resign before you put this country through the trauma of a trial. You would serve the country better by just resigning, and that's what he did. So it was Republicans who went to the president and said that. Fast forward to the last several years, where we had another president who did some egregious things, but the same thing did not happen. In fact, if people are defending and excusing what had happened, very serious things, in my opinion, that happened. Now, I hate to be a downer, but our democracy is still not out of the woods. During World War II, I had a great uncle, two great uncles that served in the military in Europe and fought against the Nazis, even as their relatives, my mother and father and great grandparents, were in internment camps here. A real contradiction to our constitutional principles, that we imprisoned people like my grandparents, my mother and father, even though they had committed no crimes, given no trial. They were behind barbed wires. But the poignant part of the story is that I had two great uncles that served our country anyway, even as our country was not perfect, right? Well, they were part of the greatest generation of Americans, fighting against a totalitarian dictator. And there was also an equally terrible ruler in Japan at the time. We were fighting against, it was a contrast of democratic countries fighting against authoritarian and totalitarianism. And that generation laid the groundwork for new institutions. you know, these institutions, you're talking about how we're going to guide these institutions for the next century here. And you know, prior to World War II, before we got involved, I told you I wrote a report on FDR. There was a movement in our country called America First, which was about American nationalism and isolationism. And people forgot the meaning of that word America First, but you know who started to use the slogan America First again? Donald Trump. America First is the slogan, and it has some of the very same meanings that it did in the 1930s. So as you look forward, I invite you to look also backward, to learn from some of these mistakes and some of the ways in which the public got fooled. So I know my 10 minutes is up, so I'm probably over my 10 minutes, but let me just say this. The greatest generation, World War II, fought this incredibly destructive war, laid the groundwork for a couple of generations of peace and freedom, and fought against the threat to our democracy. I'll turn me off in a moment. But let me say this. You can figure it out. Got it. So that's my signal that I got to wrap this up. So your generation right now, along with the 20s, 30s, and even some 40-year-olds, you now constitute the most powerful voting bloc in America. So whether we decide we're going to have a 4-day work week and make revolutionary changes, new forms of freedom, new forms of opportunity, whether our democracy is going to continue, whether freedom and equality are the values that rule the day and are part of the global value system, that we continue to lead in that respect, you are in no less a place of responsibility than my great uncles were. That's my message to you. That you may not be at war, you may not be having to go be drafted and go fight on the front lines, but make no mistake, here in California, you're on the front lines of saving our democracy and saving and reanimating and repurposing our institutions. All right. I'll end with that.
Thank you so
I
much.
think it's very important. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman Takano. And yes, absolutely. It's I think we're up for it. Are we up to the challenge, folks? Can we do this? Yes. Yes, we can. All right. So I'm going to introduce a special guest who is part of the Campus Fellows of California 100 from UC Davis. And then she's going to talk about her own experience and how it's been transformative for her and what she hopes for all of you on this journey. And so I'm really proud to introduce Jenna Weinstein from UC Davis.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Yeah, I can't hear you. How are we doing? Okay, it was a little bit better. Hi, thank you so much, Congress member. Thank you so much, Karthik. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Weinstein. As he said, I go to what school? UC Davis. Okay, did you see UC Davis? All right, perfect. Okay, cool. So I'm a California 100 Futures Fellow, and as a Futures Fellow, I have had the opportunity of making my very own manifesto, as you will. I have to be honest, when I first started, I was overwhelmed and I was very confused. I didn't know what a manifesto was, and I certainly did not know how I was going to make one. But I quickly realized as I went through the process that it became a little bit easier and one of the most fulfilling projects I've done this entire year. And as a fifth-year college student, I've done a lot of projects this year, so it's saying something. For those of you who were like me and are thinking, what the heck is a manifesto? And how am I expected to make one? Or maybe you don't have any ideas. I get it. Today, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that I used when I was creating my manifesto with the hopes that it will help you guys. So first of all, I want to take a moment and acknowledge the fact that you are all here. You are spending your Friday with us today at UC Riverside. You are making this incredible journey on creating the future of California. You should pat yourself on the back for that one. Your ideas are important. Thank you for patting yourself on the back. Yeah, okay, I love that. I love to see it. Some of you are doing it for your friends. Great. Giving support. Very good. Thank you so much. Perfect. Okay. So you guys are creating the future of California. I mean, that's absolutely insane. You are exactly what the future needs. Everyone in here is what the future needs. That being said, one of the tips I can share with you is to not doubt yourself. Sometimes creating a manifesto or solving a problem can feel incredibly difficult or impossible. It's not. My teacher in middle school used to say that the word impossible actually spells out I'm possible, which is really silly, but really, really stuck with me because it's just so clever. Like, who thinks of that? It's such a random thought. Throughout my journey writing my manifesto, there were moments where I had a ton of ideas, but there were also moments in which I had none. I realized it's okay to be stumped. Creating solutions to big problems like housing and healthcare can seem like an impossible task, but remember, you're all possible. When starting to write your manifesto, I encourage you to think of any and all ideas you have that are relevant to your topic. As long as you get the ideas down on paper, you can narrow it from there. Don't limit yourself when first starting to create ideas. Even if your idea is as simple as make public transportation more accessible. It's very general, right? Maybe you want to say make public transportation free for all people. See, you have a very general idea, you narrow it down, and then you have a more specific point. If your ideas seem completely unreasonable or impossible, start from wherever your brain takes you and go from there. Another strategy that was incredibly helpful when I made my own was to utilize work that's already being done. Our group looked to the California government to see what they were doing around our issue area, which is K through 12 education, and to see what they did. So the California governor has worked on a lot of solutions that we had. So we just basically said, continue to use the governor's work. He did it for us already, so why not just, continue to use it? This helped ground our work in reality and made our ideas seem more possible and realistic. Building off of that, try to see what local groups in your community are doing. A lot of these issue areas people really care about. And if you work with people that are already doing the work, you have people to collaborate with and you have more power, which is always really important. And the last thing I'll say is arguably the most important part of drafting your manifesto. Are you ready? Believe in yourself. I know, sounds really cliche and incredibly corny, but it is 100% true. Attempting to solve major societal problems throughout California can seem like a daunting task. These issues have been issues for years. If there was an easy solution, we would have already found it. But what the politicians and lawmakers need are your voices and ideas, your opinions and outlook on the world and how to tackle hard-pressing issues like the environment and homelessness is important and just might help toward a larger solution. Don't hesitate to reach out to a Congress member or local representative if in your area, if any of these ideas strike a chord with you. You can always do work even now. Even if it might not feel like it, you do have power. You have the power to shape the future, which might seem like a huge ask, but you're already here and you're halfway there. The work and your ideas do not have to stop once you leave UC Riverside. Continue brainstorming, continue thinking, because we are the future. All of us in here are the future. Your ideas are important and people do want to hear them. So now that I'm off my soapbox, to sum up what I've talked about, try not to judge your ideas, just get them on paper. Then you can begin to define and detail them. Look towards what others are doing to help you create some ideas. People are often, like I said, engaged in issue areas. And even though it sounds cliche, which honestly it is, believe in yourself. When I was in high school, and even now, I knew that I wanted to change the world. I just didn't know how. How would it be possible for me to do anything that would make a difference? The answer lies in taking small steps toward a larger solution. Care about the environment and waste that goes into the ocean? Organize a recycling drive at your school. Care about food insecurity? Organize a canned food drive and donate appropriate foods to your local food shelter. Even a small act, something as simple as picking up trash on the beach, means something. Please believe me if you take anything from this speech.
Please believe me when I say that you have power, more power than you realize. Creating and forming these manifestos is just one step in a hopefully larger journey you make to create a future that you want to see. It's possible, and you're possible. And I have a feeling by the end of today, you will all leave here with something you're proud of, just like I will. I cannot wait to see the ideas you all come up with. Thank you so much.
Isn't she phenomenal? And I knew you would probably prefer to hear from somebody who's closer to your age, who's actually done the work that we are going to ask you to do in these next few minutes. And we know it's a big ask. We know it's a big ask. You haven't, a lot of the times, she had weeks to do the research with college students, other college students. Okay, so it's a big ask, but we know that you can do it. And we know it's just the beginning of the conversation. So we're going to break you into groups, and chaperones, get ready, because I'm going to call group one, and then I'm going to kind of section you off. The person who is going to lead you, your facilitator, is going to be at the top of the room. That person will raise their hand. You will follow that person to your breakout room. And that is the breakout room that you will be in the rest of the afternoon. So if everybody wants to just take a moment, don't move yet. Get your stuff together. Group one. America is raising her hand. You see her here? I'm going to send. Please manage your group. We're gonna give them a chance to get out before we call the next group. Group two, if you can start getting your stuff together. It will be everybody from here to here. Okay? You guys on this side, have a seat for me for a second, okay? Group two facilitator, raise your hand. She's over here. Can you come over here, Chantal? Group two will follow Chantal. Group three, to this middle, if possible. I'm sure they'll come with you. All right. So, Chantel, are you walking them down? Group three, get your stuff together. Raise your hand. Actually, you go ahead. But I need you guys stay put for me. You are going to follow Lauren to your breakout room. Thank you for your patience. I know it's a lot of bodies moving, so it takes some time. In the meantime, while we're waiting for group 3 to exit, group 4. Does that still keep the chaperone groups together? Awesome. You will be group 4. Just give me a second. Let's let them. Group 4 facilitator, can you raise your hand? You can't see her. She's a little short, but she's there. There, Nina will lead you to your room. She's like, don't you lose her. Tiny but mighty. Aren't all of these
All my group is, my class is up here.
up to where? Okay, okay, good. And this is you. Back here.
My students are over there.
Who are they belong to?
I don't know.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So we're gonna have you go with group 5. Yeah, because we're a little packed over here. Jasmine, can you lead group 5 down to multi-purpose room 3? Group 5, you're gonna follow Jasmine. She's raising her hand.
Thank you.